You ever notice there's just a different vibe to people who grew up in the 1970s? There's this kind of quiet confidence, a groundedness that almost feels like it's from another planet. Well, today, we're going to dive into the psychology of this really unique generation, one that was shaped by a world that was, believe me, profoundly different from the one we live in now.
The source material we're looking at really kicks off with this powerful idea. It's suggesting a gap so wide that the whole way of thinking is just hard to translate. It's not about different music or clothes. We're talking about a fundamentally different internal operating system. So what on earth created this divide?
This right here, this really gets to the heart of it. It all comes down to the tools you had as a kid. Back then, your entire world was defined by the freedom of a bicycle and one simple rule: just be home by dark. Today? Well, today it's defined by the constant connection, and let's be honest, the constant tracking of a smartphone. That's not a small difference. It's an environmental shift that basically rewired childhood itself.
All right, so let's really explore that environment. We're about to see how that incredible level of unsupervised freedom created a very, very specific kind of person.
Okay, seriously, think about this for a second. Kids would just disappear for hours. I'm not talking about for a little while, I mean for 5, 6, 7 hours at a time. No phone calls, no texts, no GPS pings. Your parents just trusted you'd show up eventually. Today, that level of freedom is almost impossible to imagine. In some places, a parent would probably get investigated for that. So the really crucial thing is what happens during all that freedom. This little mental loop, it just became second nature. You're out on your own, you run into a problem, maybe a flat tire, maybe you get lost, a friend gets hurt. There's no adult you can just call up for help. The only option was always step 4. You just had to figure it out. This wasn't some lesson they taught you, it was just life. And what you get from all that constant, low-stakes problem solving is this deep, ingrained self-reliance. It's this core belief that, hey, no matter what the challenge is, a solution can be found. It's a quiet confidence that wasn't born from being told you can do anything, but from a long, long history of actually doing it. But look, that childhood freedom, that's only half the story. To really get this generation, you have to look at who was raising them. And that brings us to the second huge influence, what we're calling the survival mindset. So, their parents were often from the World War II generation. We're talking about people who had seen true hardship. They didn't over-explain things. They definitely didn't talk about their feelings all the time. They were stoic. They just endured. And as a kid, you absorbed that behavior not through lectures, but just by watching them, day in and day out. This quote just perfectly captures how that survival mindset played out in the real world. It wasn't just some philosophy. It was how you interacted with everything around you. Waste just wasn't an option. And giving up on something just because it was broken, well, that wasn't the first instinct.
And the contrast with today is pretty stark. The whole ethos of the 70s was about working with what you had. You adapted to the situation, you endured the difficulty. The modern consumer mindset, well, it often leans toward replacing the thing, complaining about the hassle, or just finding an escape from the problem altogether.
And I think this is the key. Maturity wasn't some class you took. It was just in the air you breathed. You saw real adults handling real life without a filter, working hard without needing a pat on the back. And you just learned that responsibility wasn't a punishment, it was just part of being alive. Now, to really, truly grasp that analog world, we have to contrast it with what came next. We need to take a look at the world that shaped the post-2000s generation, the world of the digital brain.
For so many people, the experience today starts right here. A constant barrage of pings, dings, and alerts.
Which, of course, leads to endless scrolling through timelines, an infinite feed of other people's perfectly curated lives. And all of that creates this immense underlying pressure. Pressure to keep up, pressure to compare, pressure to perform. The brain just never, ever gets a moment of true silence.
And the result of all that constant noise is this massive information gap. I mean, the sheer volume of information a young person processes in a single day right now is estimated to be more than what someone in the 70s might have seen in an entire week. Our brains just weren't built for that level of input.
And, well, here are the consequences. This isn't a character flaw. It's just cognitive exhaustion. When your brain never gets a break, it's hard to form deep thoughts. When you're constantly comparing your real life to somebody else's highlight reel, it completely changes how you build your own identity. It's not just about being distracted.
It's a fundamental rewiring that makes it way easier to feel overwhelmed and way harder to feel content. So what does this all mean for those folks who grew up back in the 70s? It puts them in this truly unique spot. They are, as the source material calls them, the bridge generation. See, their defining feature is that they have lived, and I mean really lived, in both realities. They remember life without the internet, without screens, without any of the digital noise. But they also had to adapt and learn how to navigate this hyper-connected world that we all live in today. So this generation, they literally connect two completely different shores. A world that was slow, kind of raw, and fundamentally real, and a world that is fast, loud, and overwhelmingly digital. They carry the memory and the mindset of that old world with them right into the new one. And this, right here, this gets to the heart of it all. Their resilience wasn't the result of some lesson plan. It was forged in the quiet challenges of an unsupervised childhood and the stoic example of their parents. It came from being tested over and over and over again.
Which leaves us with one last and I think really important question to think about. I'm turning this one over to you.
Think about it. The 70s generation, they faced a world with less safety and a lot more physical risk. But today's generation, they face these unprecedented mental and emotional pressures from a world that never, ever shuts off. So which set of challenges is tougher? Yeah, there's no easy answer, but it's definitely something we're thinking about.